My name is Madi Partovi.
And I'm Dr. Ryan Partovi.
Welcome to the Partovi Effect, creating the consensus. And what creating the consensus means to me is no matter what we bring to the table, no matter what we talk about, no matter what we talk about with our guests, may we always be present to the unity and the connectedness that inherently exists between us.
That's beautiful.
Managed care, algorithmic care is a scam.
What a lot of people don't realize with these HMOs is a trained monkey could do the job of the doctors that work for these HMOs. It's like literally put the patient's symptoms in. Most probable diagnosis is this. First treatment to try is this. If that doesn't work, then do this. If that doesn't work, then do this. If that doesn't work, prescribe Prozac and send them out in the street. That's basically, I mean, they are managing. It's not just managed care in terms of we're managing costs, which is what the term refers to. It's like, no, the doctors themselves are managed to the point where their job is to make money for big hospital and big pharma, and they're working for big hospital and big pharma. They're not your doctor. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you go to a doctor with your HMO and that is your doctor. No, that is the hospital's doctor. That is pharma's doctor. That is not your doctor. Your doctor is not your doctor unless you're paying your hard-earned cash to hire that doctor, to pay that doctor to work for you. So, you can tell yourself it's my doctor. My HMO covers it real well, but I hate to break it to you. It covers it because that doctor is working for that HMO system and doing what is going to further the profits of that HMO, that hospital system, and the pharmaceutical companies that underpin and fund the whole thing. So, I mean, that's not to disparage my colleagues who are working in that system. Look, everybody's got to earn a living. I get it.
I said in the beginning, even well-meaning doctors,
Yeah,
are in
it's not the
this
doctor's
system.
fault. They're just like, hey, I got to get a job. I got to send my kids to private school like everybody else. That's a joke. It's another one of those inside jokes. But look, I mean, the fact of the matter is that they spend a lot of money and a lot of time going to med school. I get that sometimes they come out, they just like, hey, I just want a paycheck. Just want to be easy. I get it. I get it.
I know several disenchanted MDs.
Sure. When
Okay.
we do, of course we do.
Yeah. One of which, we're going to invite on as a guest.
Oh, I'm
As
sure.
a
Yeah, many of them.
many of them.
But I would just say, look, I mean, people often think, oh, the doctors, these horrible doctors that, lied to me. Like, no, no, no. The doctors only only gave you their best understanding of the science. The problem is the doctors themselves were lied to because the doctors were trained from the very beginning in school that this is how you evaluate medical evidence. Is it randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blind clinical trial? If it is, it's the gold standard. If it's not, it's, it's second rate at best, right? So that in of itself is a lie, okay? But it's a lie that furthers pharma because pharma knows that those are the kind of trials that pharmaceutical interventions do best at. So it's like, of course, they fund these medical schools who then teach their students that this is what is the gold standard of research. Meta-analyses of observational controlled trials show no significant difference between observational trials and randomized placebo-controlled double-blinded trials. So, but again, they don't teach you that in med school. So, I mean, they taught it in naturopathic medical school, but they're not teaching this stuff in conventional medical school. So that's the first thing I would say. And really the next thing I would say is that pharma is paying. I mean, the journals that they tell you are the top journals where the best randomized controlled trials are published. The top 5 journals, top 5, which are a lot of them are quite old, been around for over 100 years. Lancet, British Medical Journal, New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of the American Medical Association, Annals of Internal Medicine, the big five, are the most corrupt, the most bought out, pharma page on every third ad journals. And yet those are held up as the highest standard of evidence in medicine. And the only journals you really need to follow, because if it's, it's all the news that's fit to print in the medical world is going to be found on the pages of one of those five journals. And that's what's drilled into your head every single day of your medical school career. Then why would you look anywhere else? B, why would you question, anything you're seeing there? Because that's part of the nature of your education from the very beginning, is to sort of indoctrinate you into looking at these sources and looking for this particular type of trial to justify whatever treatment you give to the patient. Well, the problem is that what about all of the smaller journals that maybe don't get quite as much funding from big pharma and tend to have a much greater willingness to publish, for example, a positive trial on a natural intervention than one of the top five will? I wonder why. So, look, I have all the compassion in the world for doctors, because the thing about education, and we're going to do a whole podcast, I'm sure, if not half a dozen of them, on education. But the thing about education is all education is brainwashing. The question is, what kind of soap do you want to use, right? And so the soap that's being used, metaphorically speaking, in conventional medical school is an industrialized, highly corporatized soap, because that's the nature of our modern medical system. I mean, literally, if you look back we'll probably do one podcast just on the history of medicine. But if you look back in terms of when Rockefeller worked with the first conventional, what we at the time were called allopathic medical doctors, which basically are doctors that allo meaning other, pathic meaning disease. So they treat something other than disease. What's other than the disease that they could treat? Oh, the symptoms. So these were doctors who treated symptoms primarily with drugs, also with certain surgical procedures. And that became really the progenitor of the modern conventional medical paradigm. But the problem with that is that the way that it evolved was really inside of Rockefeller's desire to industrialize medicine, because he had successfully industrialized multiple other professions. So the idea was, hey, well, we could do the same thing we did over here, with steel and railroad and everything else, and we could apply that to medicine and industrialize medicine and actually make it a really profitable industry. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, we've got to have something that's not too much, doesn't cost too much to make, but we can sell it for 10, 100, 1,000 times more than it costs to make it. Oh, what could do that? Well, pharmaceuticals, right? So, this is one example, but I would say that understanding that this system is simply one that most doctors fall into, frankly, because that's what all they know. That's what they've been taught from early age, that this is the way you help people, and they want to go help somebody. And they're taught this is the best available evidence. This is the best way to approach it. This is, if you want to really, practice evidence-based medicine and do the real right thing, you need to go to, a school where you're going to learn how to do that. And that's going to be a school that's, ranks high on the US News and World Report in terms of medical schools. And look, I mean, I have ultimate compassion for these colleagues. I will just say that they, from day one, were lied to, have been lied to, are continuing to be lied to, and are continuing to be lied to, because that is how they keep the profit engine of the medical industry churning.
Sounds super robust, doesn't it? Robust machine.
It is, absolutely. And at this point, it's, over 100 years old. So it's not like a new machine. This is like, something that's been going for quite a while. And I'm in this unique position where I'm both sort of part of the system, but I'm so at the periphery and the edge of the system, because I'm, a naturopathic physician, and because I'm in private practice, that I don't profit from the system as it exists. And so because I don't profit from the system, but I'm still part of it, I can critique it in ways that most of the doctors who are profiting from the system are not able to do, because there's this big, elephant in the room, which is the conflict of interest of like, well, of course I'm practicing the best medicine because that's the medicine that everybody does, and that's what my colleagues do, and that's what we all know is the, standard of care. But the question is, where did that standard of care come from? Well, a lot of times it comes from lately, especially in the last decade, increasingly hospital administrators deciding, bean counters, basically saying, well, how can we maximize profits and minimize costs? Oh, okay, well, we'll make this the new protocol, right? And because that's going to maximize profits and minimize costs. And
Speaking of hospital,
they assume that that's the doctors assume, well, that must be based on the best evidence, because the guy who did it is an administrator, but he also has an MD after his name. Well, yeah, but he probably hasn't practiced medicine in 25 years, because he's basically become a full-time administrator. But you said you were saying,
yeah, the American Board of Internal Medicine.
oh, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Go for it.
Dr. Corey and Dr. Merrick, Dr. Varone, I think some others of the FLCCC are now misinformationists.
Yeah, McCullough, I believe, is also,
McCullough, yes.
and he's not part of the board of the FLCCC, but he's considered an ally for sure.
Yeah, and they're looking to revoke the boards of these doctors.
Well, and that's, that doesn't surprise me in the
Have
least.
transcended. These doctors have a couple of things. These doctors have transcended, that system. Like, why would they want to even work in a hospital system anymore? After what happened, one, ABIM, go for it, because you're just going to show your tail and support everybody like us in building this parallel system.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think it's great that they're showing their true colors, because what it's really doing is it's created an environment where we have more allies than ever before, and more of them are MDs and DOs. When I was in school, and frankly for the first decade after school, you either sort of went to the conventional medical conferences where everything was drugs and surgery, or you went to the naturopathic holistic conferences where there was maybe a peppering of a few MDs, but it was mostly and maybe some DOs, but it was mostly naturopathic doctors, acupuncturists, chiropractors, people in more of like the integrative, holistic, natural medicine world. Now I go to conferences and it's like 80% MDs, right? It's like, what the heck? And they're not talking about drugs and surgery. I mean, drugs get mentioned, but it's like 80% things like ketosis, fasting, autophagy supported by intermittent fasting and time delayed eating, herbs, detoxification, chronic Lyme disease, all the stuff that I've been hearing about for years, of course.
When's the next conference?
These conferences, the MDs that I've met at the conferences I love seeing the waking up that's happening. It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
And I told Madi, I mean, I've had this view since I was really starting my journey as a naturopathic physician. I said, look, if everybody was practicing medicine naturopathically tomorrow, if I woke up and the whole world was practicing the way I practice, I'd say, great, I can retire and do something else, But I think that until then, we've got to keep fighting the fight. And the cool thing is we're winning.
Yeah.
It's like the more they scream, the more they yell, the more they kick us off the boards, the more they try to silence us and revoke our licenses and everything else, the stronger we get, because the more people realize how absolutely corrupt and bankrupt the system is. As long as we were sort of this fringe minority that's sort of left over here, and diversity of thought was welcome, as long as you went and got the MD and after your name, you could kind of do whatever it is that you needed to do, and you could disagree and that was fine. No problem. But then the moment they started kicking people out who disagreed, it's sort of like, oh, I see what you guys are up to.
You know what's so remarkable about you?
Tell me.
I call you the doctor of doctors. You're so used to being called a quack quack all your life. So you are so unwavering and so, unbreakable, in the face of that, and you keep going.
Well, all doctors are quacks. I say this all the time. Nobody wants to hear it, right? All doctors are quacks. All doctors are giving their best educated guess as to what's going on in your body. We think we know a little bit, but the truth of the matter is that the more you learn, the more you realize how much we don't know. And at the end of the day, all doctors are just giving their educated guess as to whatever's going on in your body and their educated guess as to what's most likely to make a difference for you. Do I know that a particular treatment is going to make the difference for you? No. And any doctor who tells you, oh, this is definitely going to cure your whatever, is a snake oil salesman, But I would just say that given that, you can be with somebody who knows he's a quack, or you can go to somebody who thinks he's God, which is,
I prefer
keep an eye out for those.
The one with integrity and the lion's heart.
But everybody's encountered that doctor, and I'm not going to pick on any particular specialty, but everybody's encountered that doctor who, you're like, this guy thinks he's God, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah,
you know what I'm
absolutely.
And that doesn't diminish the fact that there are some amazing physicians out there, conventional and integrative holistic, who are absolutely able to, God's help, I would say, create some real miracles for people. I mean, I've certainly seen my fair share, but I would just say that with God's grace, right? I mean, that's not, there's no way that I can really say that, you know what I mean? Like it's not, I mean, there's no way for me to say okay, yeah, that was definitely me that did that,
Yeah.
I mean, I may have that hubristic thought from time to time, but, then I have to kind of laugh at myself. It's important to keep that in perspective, I think.
Butterflies, because you touched on that. You're used to being, called that quack.
Well, Dr. Diadamo, my mentor, he used to say, Ryan, you see that certificate on my wall, which was his license to practice naturopathic medicine? He said, that is a certificate from the state of Connecticut authorizing me to be out of my mind. Because according to the other guys down the street, I'm crazy. So he said, look, I'm legally authorized to be nuts. So, I took that on. I love that. I love Peter's philosophy about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm learning how to deal with that and be with that. I get some nice, nasty letters, after I write newsletters sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I remember writing one about cancer and in our experience, what we've seen, and I some nice nasties, and then how do you sleep at night, and I'll be honest, my initial reaction was
like a baby.
Well, okay, I'll be honest, I'm human, right? So my initial
I was talking about myself, not her. Sorry.
Yeah.
I sleep like a baby. That's a fact. She will back this up.
Yes. I'm human, and then I took a deep breath and I actually consulted your legal brain about, how to respond, in a way that, really captures my highest level of being. So you supported me with that. So I actually responded back to this guy, really getting him. I get that something that I wrote, you're having a reaction to. And if you pinpoint, exactly what it is, I would be happy to take a look at that. And if it's something I need to recant, I will absolutely do that. I didn't hear back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but whatever it is that has people react, I'm choosing to, because I know it's not about me. They're dealing with out there, may they be healed, may they,
I feel like we could do a whole podcast on reactions.
Yeah. Like, may they have the opportunity to actually address that in a healthy way, so that their discourse doesn't have to be like writing some nasty letter, yeah.
But look, I mean, other people have different opinions. Obviously, we have very strong bias, which I think we see a lot of the failures of conventional medicine. So I think
Yeah.
that because of that, it sort of puts a lot of the weak points in the conventional medical system in strong relief for us. It's like, oh wow, you know. And I think that there's probably biases that we have in that realm that maybe we're not present to. I'm sure there's areas where, they look at us and they say, I mean, I think, I have five conventional medical doctors in my family. I'm like the black sheep in that sense. But my uncle, who's an emergency medicine physician, now retired, he once said to me, the biggest problem I have with what you're doing is that you make some money off of the stuff you prescribe, which is true. We make about 10% of our monthly income from the nutraceuticals, the natural medicines, which are food-derived medicines, botanical herbal medicines that I prescribe in the practice. And he said that's a conflict of interest, and I agree. It is somewhat of a conflict of interest. What I would say is that at the very worst, I might prescribe, let's say, one thing that you maybe I think will help you, but you could possibly have gotten by without it, right? That's sort of the concern. And I would say, look, at worst case scenario, you're getting side benefits from that, like it's having antioxidant effects, it's, slowing down aging, it's helping to preserve some other aspect of your health. I mean, that's just the nature of the kind of things I prescribe. It's like they're not like, oh, I prescribe you this unnecessary thing, and as a result of that, you're going to get some horrible side effect that's going to cause a disease for you. That's just not how nutraceuticals work. But let's say that there's a cost overrun, right? There's a financial piece there where it's like, oh, you could have saved a little money had, there been some third party involved. Okay, maybe so, but then you have the inefficiency of having a third party, right? So there's that whole thing where the intermediary likes to mark things up. And if you doubt that, just look at how much it costs to produce the drugs that are sold at your local retail pharmacy versus how much they charge for them. I think you'll be a little shocked. But I bring this up really to get to where I was headed, which is uh, we're really open about this. This is something we're happy. We talk about it all the time and really share about it really openly. How many medical oncologists that you visit are going to tell you 60 to 70% of my annual income comes from the chemotherapy that I prescribe? I don't know. I've never heard. I mean, maybe we heard one patient who said that his doctor told him that. But I think that for the most part, they don't talk about that. It's not something that they're open about. And there's a huge, I mean, massive conflict of interest there. To me, um, if I were making 60 to 70% of my income from taking the treatments that I was administering to you, marking them up and then billing your insurance for 10 times what I paid for them so that I could make some margin, I just would feel like that would make me a totally unreliable actor when it comes to my prescribing of those treatments. And yet people see medical oncology as really like the not only the gateway to oncologic care, but really the gold standard. That's, your medical oncologist is the one who tells you what you should do for your cancer. And yet they're profiting tremendously off of the advice they're giving. So, I mean, I don't see how that's not 6 to 7 times worse just based on the math. Um, but this is something that I think sometimes even the people in other specialties are not present to, right? So I said my uncle's in emergency medicine. He's not an oncologist. He doesn't know the billing structure of how it works for an oncologist that's in private practice. You know, I mean, why would he? So, but a lot of oncologists are in fact either in private practice or they work as part of a group practice. That's usually what it looks like, where there'll be, 10 oncologists together, but they're all obviously benefiting off of the sale of the chemo. So, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. And like I said, you know, this, as you peel back the onions and the layers of this system, you start to see the corruption emerge. And, you know, I mean, I'm open to whatever kind of critiques people have of what we do. I probably will acknowledge them and say, yeah, no, that's a good point, you know, but I think that there's not that openness and willingness to acknowledge the corruption inside of the conventional system. They're sort of seen as like, oh, these guys can do no wrong, right? Like this, the ivory tower, you know, like, and whatever they're doing is just the best of the best, and it's for you, the patient, you know? Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I want to intentionally wrap up this
Sure.
episode. Um, First, I'd like to share about Beverly, our neighbor. So within 5 months of being diagnosed stage 4, she was on home hospice, and she was taking she was on chemo. She could no longer eat, and every time I texted her wanting to see her, she would just delay it, delay it, delay it. It's just like right across the street. And came to a point where, I had a fear, around seeing her as well, because I knew that she wouldn't look the same. Every time I caught a glimpse of her across the street, she looked very different. And she
Sure.
got the scarf on. And then I said, so I texted her. I was very insistent. And she said that you and I could come over. She doesn't want to scare the kids. And then I texted her back. I said, Beverly, like, whatever it is you look like right now, like you're still essence of Beverly. Our older child, wants to see you. He loves her. I remember when he was 3 years old, she had family over, her daughter was over, and we were talking on the street and just being joyful with each other and connecting. And he kind of keeled over his 3-year-old body and said, I just love her. And Bev. And it's so beautiful, and so within 5 months of her diagnosis, she passed. And I still look at that empty house. There's no more meeting in the middle of the street and that embrace and her dropping off, little cute gifts for the kids and, babysitting them in a pinch. And I miss that. She had a post-COVID diagnosis, by the way,
Mhm.
and deteriorated very quickly. So Beverly ultimately says, okay, come on over. Come on over. So all 4 of us, you and I, and Ryan, who's now 7, and Jean-Luc, who's 2. And we spent an hour, talking and loving on her, and she let me give her a massage. Because, it's painful, being in her condition and laying down like that all the time.
Mhm.
Um, and Preci, his nickname is Precious, Precioso. Ryan just loved on her. And then when we came home, he looked at you and he said, or he told us, Daddy, she looks different. And you said, in the next moment after you said this, you got that it was a projection. You said, is it scary? And he said, no, delicate. And my heart just, like, I felt like I was like on my knees, in the presence of such godly beauty in that moment of our child. Because he doesn't have frail, he doesn't have weak, he doesn't have scary, all those stories.
Mhm.
And it was such a beautiful, that little voice, delicate. No, Daddy, delicate. So in the few days of just being with this beauty and being with the connection with her, I made an agreement with myself. And the agreement is that I would make her passing make a difference for me and for our practice and what we're up to in the world. And that agreement that I made for myself is not sufficient unless I share it, right? So I'm sharing it with you and I'm sharing it with, our community. That is what I am giving my word to constitute myself to wake up and to take those actions. Like, how can I be a force multiplier in supporting as many people as possible, on this journey, this very distinct, uncertain journey, and sometimes scary and terrifying, overwhelming journey that they're on. Thank you, by the way, for loving me and accepting me and really providing the space for me to go through all of my emotions.
Sure, man.
Yeah, because for me, sometimes it's a lot, and this is the way that I, on the fly, process and integrate what I'm learning and what I'm dealing with and what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling, so that I could show up in a way that is peaceful, and loving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay,
Well, and thank you for doing what you need to do to be able to do that. Because that obviously makes our lives work. So
yeah, I think I'd be very angry like all the time. I did move through this. So I'd love to end this by um kind of showing how I do this. And so I'm gonna shift the subject real quick. And sometimes we're so, like, in the last week we've been so busy and I haven't had the opportunity to share with you like the highlight of um my day, and it's picking up our 7-year-old son from school. And this might be like a prelude to, what we talk about in about the educational system. I was late picking him up this certain day, right? I walked into the school and he was at the front and he was peacefully reading a book and he was so engrossed in the book. Yeah, and I thought that he would fuss, about me being late, but no, there was no fussing. He was just so engrossed in this book. He said, "Hi, Mama." It's like, and he started sharing about what he was reading. And I thought it was just so sweet. Oh, okay, I'm not in trouble for being late.
mhm.
I won. And then he gets into the car and I ask him, what was the highlight of your day? What were your favorites? Did you feel loved? And then all of a sudden he came alive so beautifully and so brilliantly. And he said, "Mama, we did science today. And the science teacher, did a magic trick. And we experimented on absorbency, absorbency technology. And your life would be very hard, if you didn't have that technology, because of Jean-Luc's still in diapers."
Right.
And 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 then he was on a riff. If we didn't have science and technology, there wouldn't be any light. There wouldn't be any cars. There wouldn't be any any Chuck E. Cheese or video games for that matter.
The priorities of a 7-year-old boy.
Yes, it was just so I had the review mirror down so I could see his face, and I was just like, "Woo, is that mine? We made that."
Yeah.
We're providing the space for him to discover and to explore and to be fully self-expressed, and it was just so so beautiful. And we have been on quite a hero's journey. Having in 12 heads of school,
Hmm.
13 now, with this new school,
Yeah.
and making a powerful choice, about his
Actually,
environment.
14. We looked at
Me 13, you 14, because I
who-
wasn't there with you. Right.
Oh, maybe so.
Oh, no, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
14. I think actually the one I toured by myself was considered part of the original 12. I don't know.
Okay.
Doesn't
all right.
matter.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't
A
matter.
lot.
Hero's journey. It was a lot. But just having him show up this way, and I'm a big feeler. One of my superpowers is empathy. Whew, and I could feel his peacefulness and his ease and his joy. And it was such a win. So I've been waiting to share that with you because it's so beautiful.
Thank you for doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love to hear that he's loving science because I love science.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I've
And then
had
he
a
said,
love affair with science since I was at least in 6th grade, if not earlier. Go ahead.
right. And then he said, um, and then I had drama, um, music and art and conflict resolution.
Right,
That as a kid,
right.
like resolution.
I think we all could use a little more conflict resolution in this country these days.
Yeah. So
On
it's
this
just
planet, frankly.
really exciting that he's in a space where he can think critically. I think it's so essential for children,
Yeah.
especially in this day and age.
So thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Partovi Effect, Creating the Consensus. I am Dr. Ryan Partovi.
And I'm Mrs. Madi Partovi.
Thank you so much for joining us. Be well.